Hey. Welcome, everyone. So I think we should get started.
Okay, let's do it. Hello, everyone. I'm Jessica Steinberg from the Times of Israel, but really here I'm local reporter person and friend of Dasee Berkowitz, and I was very pleased that Dasee asked me to lead this interview because I and my husband Daniel and I were the members of the first Soulful Parenting cohort, which was how many years ago, Dasee?
5 years ago.
Really? Wow. Okay. Because a lot of things have stayed with me since that first year that we did it, and I think it was an entire year. It was a night that we always looked forward to. So let me take this to Dasee. I think a lot of people here know Dasee, but I'm going to do the formal introduction because she's going to have to get used to this over the coming year and months as she introduces her book. Dasee Berkowitz is a Jewish educator, facilitator, and founder of Ayeka's Becoming a Soulful Parent program. Her writing has appeared in Kveler.com, Haaretz, The Forward, JTA, Times of Israel, and other publications. Dasee lives in Jerusalem, up the street from me, with her husband, Leon, who is here as, what did you call yourself, Leon? I liked your title for the evening. Proud partner, proud co-parent, okay. Life partner, yes. With her husband and 3 children. And we're going to talk about the writing, the coming together of this book, and get a little bit of a taste of soulful parenting, the soulful parenting touch, so to speak, that Dasee does so very, very well. And as a writer, what I always find interesting as a writer and talking to other people who go through the writing process is to hear a little bit about what brings that person, what brought Dasee to write this book after writing and taking notes and being part of these soulful parenting groups. What made you sit down and put this book together, which I have read, and I have it by my bedside, and I'm looking at it these days more often than not because it has some very good things in there. So Dasee, take it away and get us started here, and tell us what made you decide that I'm going to sit down and put this book together.
Well, I think the short answer is that Ari Ben me. I think that's just a shout out I want to say to mentors and teachers who really push you to do things that are beyond your comfort zone. I definitely was someone who wrote articles, and that was kind of my own attention span when I started to have kids, and then. And even before I actually get into that, I really just want to thank you guys all for being here. And I'm just seeing, on this screen, so many beloved people. Jessica, that you agreed to do this. So, at the drop of a hat, there wasn't much else on the, these busy evenings, nowadays. So I really just want to thank you for that. And, I see that my father's here, Joel Berkowitz, and my sister, Lisa Kotler Berkowitz. And I definitely learned everything about how to be a human in the world, really from them. And also really to thank my children and my husband, Leon, who have just enabled me and loved me, and also given me this laboratory to think about this kind of work and to practice this kind of work and to fail at this kind of work, and to get up and continue moving forward. And all the facilitators who have been in my trainings, and dear friends who are here. So I just really want to say thank you for being here.
So Dasee, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. I'm going to say to you, before we get into them, you're putting in good things here that definitely need to be said. So why don't you, even though a lot of us here know Ayeka, know Soulful Parenting, take a step back from my question and tell us a little bit about the Ayeka soulful parenting journey in a sense, even before you got to the book. Bring us to that point.
I'd love to. So I think that, I mean, it really started when I had my first child, Tamir, who's written about a lot in this book. And, you know, it's one of these experiences when, I don't know if any of the mothers have had this experience, but when I was about to have him, I was like, no other woman has ever gone through this experience ever before in their life. Nobody has carried a human being in their body and then given birth to this person and then had to take care of, you know, it's one of these experiences that obviously was not true when you look around and you see everyone that has children. And I think that it was such a remarkable, you know, kind of awe-inspiring and life-changing experience for me. And being someone who's kind of spiritually, I don't even know if I would say attuned, but more nourished by spiritual connection, I realized how out of it I felt once I actually, you know, once I had Tamir, that I no longer, there was no longer time or space for me to, you know, pray the way I used to pray or be a part of a synagogue service. I no longer, you know, had any time to really learn or grow or nourish all of these different spiritual parts of myself that I used to so enjoy. I could certainly never take time away on my own to just think and reflect. So I think it really began then, in those moments, and that got me to just, you know, thinking and writing and every experience I had. You know, I was sharing, Jessica, with you earlier, this experience I had in Sag Harbor where Leanne and I
Right.
live. And I see that Jill's on the phone also, and I'm really happy to see you here. Where I was at Yom Kippur services, and I'm wearing my son, you know, one of those baby Bjorn things, you know, in front of me, doing a Shamnu Bagadnu, you know, that I've sinned and I've done all these treacherous things, and I'm hitting him and not myself, you know, because I'm carrying him, and I'm thinking, so how is he implicated in my own life and my own journey and my own missteps? How fair is that? When do I see, you know, how am how am I meant to kind of act and interact with these this new life that I'm now responsible for? So it just got me thinking in all sorts of ways, you know, my prayer practice became much more, you know, focused, you know, one prayer, you know, Shema Israel,
Mhm.
just there, you know, just get to the
Hear
Shema,
me.
you know what I mean? Just start listening. And I think it really very much made things incredibly essential, you know, the essential pieces of what I needed to grow as a human being happened in those early years. And then when we moved to Israel about 6, 7 years ago, Leon, 7 years ago, that I met Aryeh, you know, one rainy day at Ayeka in a cafe on Emek Rafaim, and he invited me to be a part of their work. And I realized that there was this whole other component to spirituality. It wasn't only the prayer and the ritual and the practices that we do, but it was actually about a whole other orientation about how I see myself, how I see my relationship with others, how I see the people that I'm meant to care for. And the lens of soulfulness is a lens that says there's a role and a responsibility that each of us has on this earth that only we can fulfill. And that what makes us human is not only our beating heart and our, you know, the neurons that are firing and to make us alive, but our nefesh and our neshama and our
Mhm.
souls, what make us alive. And this is, you know, when we think of in the metaphor of Jewish wisdom and Jewish wisdom literature, that's real. That perspective is so eye-opening for me because it tells me that when things like, you know, my kids are driving me crazy, or I'm having a difference in parenting approach with my spouse, which I never have. We get along awesomely all the time. But whenever there might be anything there, that I need to take a step back and recognize he has a soul, he has a tikkun or a purpose and something that he needs to also fix in the world, and his presence on earth and the way he is meant to do that. I do. Each of my children, who are so different one from the other, they also do. And that's a very grounding and calming perspective to have. So
Mhm.
we took this idea and we just ran with it. We created lots of materials around it, a whole curriculum. We started training groups of people. Many of those who have been in our trainings are on this call now. And
Da- Wait, Dasee, how long, break it down a little bit from the very start of you working with, of you and Arye sitting down and figuring out this concept and starting with a few groups, I imagine. How long a period of time are we talking about? And how long until you felt like, wow, there's a body of knowledge here? I mean, I can remember you taking copious notes during our sessions, but meaning there, you know, you go from leading these sessions and working with Arya to figure out what this is all looking like to where you are now. So give us a little bit of a sense of that and how that sort of how that followed through over the course of the years.
It really was step by step. We started, and I think this is such a good lesson for all of us who are, who are creative people and are creating new things. That there's not a finished product, that everything is always in process. But we started by calling a group of friends. I started by calling a group of friends, 8 or 10 people, and inviting them into my living room. And Ari and I would like sit for hours and hours, figuring out exactly, well, who's going to lead on this and who's going to lead on that, and which text should we bring, and this is a great one that we can add. And then also being really honest that it's very vulnerable to invite a group of friends together who are noticing that you're also in the kind of midst of your parenting struggles, and you're convening a
Right.
group and facilitating this becoming a soulful parent group. So being really honest that it's an experiment, and then just going from there, right? It was a 6-week course initially. We did the 6-week course, and then I would say about a half a year later, I met I met some folks professionally in the States, Mark Horowitz from the JCCA, Meredith Lewis, who's on the call, from PJ Library, other folks who have a kind of broader perspective, and who are saying, well, let's bring this to other people. Let's
Right.
bring facilitators and conveners, and we need to be talking this language. I think sometimes when we talk about uh, parent education, we are using a kind of a deficit approach, right? This approach that says, either in the general world and in the Jewish world, in the general world, we say, you know what, you don't know how to get your kids to eat broccoli, and you don't know get your kids off of the screens. And so I'm going to give you this fail-proof method to do that, which puts you at a deficit and says, I don't know anything, and let me come and learn.
Right.
Also have that approach in the Jewish world sometimes, and with all the best intentions, and I do it too, and we should continue doing it. We need it for Jewish literacy. But that approach says, you don't know how to do Shabbat dinner, and you don't know how to run Passover Seder, come and learn. And that's great, and we need to do it. But it also puts us at a deficit that says, I don't know anything, and you're going to teach me. So the Becoming a Soulful Parent program is about saying you have everything that you need to be the parent your child wants and needs from you.
I love
And
I love that line. Go
and
on. It's the greatest line. Yeah.
if you start to believe that, and like really embody that, then it can just give you firm footing from which you can continue to parent your child. And then everything else is extra and is amazing, but to be able to start from that different perspective.
Standing on one foot. Um, Dasee, what was it like for you? Because you had arrived, you had moved back to Israel, obviously several years before you got started with Soulful Parenting. I think that's the timing. And then you took it on the road, so to speak, in the States. What was it like for you balancing the Israeli parent that you were becoming, the Anglo parent that you are in Israel, the American parents that you were speaking with? What's soulful parenting like when you're doing it in two very different places, when you're leading this in two very different places?
Yeah, well, I think it's a beautiful question. I think, you know, here I'm too soft and there I'm too hard.
Okay.
I remember
And what
sharing,
about, sorry.
yeah, I remember sharing a story to Wendy Mogul, who many of you know, who wrote "Blessing of a Skin Knee," and she said, and it was in this Q&A, and I raised my hand, and she was talking about the kind of the hovering snowplow parenting, where you like clear the way and nothing's ever a problem for kids. And I remember raising my hand, telling her, "Well, my son got a message from his madricha at Sayarut, which is the Scouts here, right? His leader at the Scouts." And asked him to bring matches, a knife, and money to Sairut because they were building a bonfire and making dinner. And he had to get there on his own. And by the way, he had to go right after school. So he had to bring all of those things to school, and then
Great.
go. I remember she was writing it down. She's like, oh, good example, of how or in Israel. So I think that there's that perspective, and there's that I think there's we give our kids so much more freedom here, and I think they grow in such confidence in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of you know and there are sometimes moments when I'm a little bit more at a loss. I think anxiety and depression, rates of anxiety and depression are very high in America. Um,
Mm,
and and I haven't seen studies, I don't know studies in Israel, but I imagine that it's less here in some ways. And I would love if people on the call who know more can share in the chat. I'd love to know about it because there's just there are different norms of what's okay to let your kids do and what's not okay to let your kids do.
right.
So and actually having an Israeli perspective can be helpful, and also having an American perspective here in Israel that also puts a focus on education and learning and like longer school days sometimes is also really important.
You're right. Okay. So now I'm going to move us forward a little bit. Okay. So you do all this work, all these groups, all the many fabulous chats, I'm sure, with Arya bin David, working with the team, figuring this all out, compiling the information. And then at some point you say, there's a book here. It's a self-help book. It's a parenting book. It's sort of a guide to have by your side that you can look at every so often, or often. And before we get to the corona part of all of this, at what point did you say, okay, there's something, I want to put this together in some format and I want to put it out there, perhaps as an accompaniment to the groups, something that stands alone. Tell us a little bit about that, how you came to that point, that decision making, that decision.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the way that I wanted to see it is really as a companion. That this different from lots of other books that might have a beginning, middle, and end. This book has episodes. It's kind of
Right.
episodic. We live our lives in episodes. We go from topic to topic of issue to issue that's bothering us in the moment. And so I wanted to create something that could be like your friend, who's saying, I'm here too, I'm also struggling. Here's how Jewish wisdom has anchored me in some ways and has given me perspective, and let's walk this path together. So I think that this I think there was also an element of how do you maximize level of companionship, or expanding that circle of friends
Right.
when the States can only be 2 or 3 times a year maximum. I have a husband and 3 kids here that need a lot of attention. The kids mainly, a lot of attention, and and how can we do it in an efficient way, and in a way that works. And I also, for me, just the process of writing was a lot of early mornings. I love 5 o'clock in my house. It's my favorite time of day.
Yes.
And and there's a way in which, and you'll see when you read the book, that there was like any crisis or issue that I had in my family, it was great
Right.
fun. I'm like, oh, thank God nobody's getting along. Like I have so much, and it just gave me, and I
Right.
found every time. So I think there was also a part, and I imagine many writers here, or people who have written or enjoyed writing, find also that when you start writing about something, it just becomes less scary. It becomes
Right.
more, more manageable. I left my office where I'm sitting now to join my kids for breakfast, and I was just a happier person, because I had some time to reflect. And if that
Right.
worked, I think even the reflection questions that we have throughout the book can also, will also serve other people as they reflect on the things that are challenging for them.
So I kept on thinking as I was reading it, and I actually read it over the Chagim, over the high holidays, which was there. There were more pockets of time to really sit and appreciate it. I kept on thinking, this is personal. Whoa, this is Dasee, this is Leon, these are their kids. What are the kids gonna think in a few years? But I did want to ask you, what was your thought process about it? On one hand, there's their fodder for your soulful parenting, but they're also real people. Did you hesitate? Did you say, absolutely, I'm going forward with the personal stories because this is who I am? Tell us a little bit about that.
I think it's a great question, and I had the kids. I read the parts to the kids that I wrote.
Oh, yeah. Mm.
And it was like some very sweet. My daughters and my youngest said to me, I said, I want to read these parts. Is it okay that I wrote about you? And she's 7 now. She was 6 then. And she said, Ima, I'm sure that you wrote very kind things about me. And I think they were really carrying it as a source of pride that, like, wow, my Ima is writing a book about our family. And I think, what the way that I framed it to them is that, if we can be honest and real about our struggles, then we can enable other people to be honest and real about their struggles. That don't mean that we lose faith. The opposite. It means that we have so much faith, and when we can share it with others, then we can also show up in a more real, honest way with our children and have the koach and the strength to. So I think that was really the perspective. There's certainly things that I didn't include, and parts that I edited out. That was too raw and too, and
Yeah.
this me, one of the things that I really encourage, I'm using my life and my experience to enable all of us to use our own life and experience as, as the real text to reflect on, to analyze, to think about. So it's really more about, hopefully, in a humble way, modeling something, as opposed to saying, like, oh God, now we know everything about Dasee's.
No, it's personal, but it works. Listen, people, I think people are always looking, especially in a nonfiction work like this. It's very helpful to know that the person who actually put these words to paper or to the computer screen is experiencing obviously so many of the things that you, the reader, have experienced. It just brings it all home to you, I think.
And I think
Um,
that Jessica, of like, so many, in a way, this is like the anti expert advice book. It really, there's so many, and I have a stack like this high of, of parenting books that I read and I learn from, and I try the scripts, and I'm like, oh my God, that really works. When I say to my kid, I'm going to remember this, and then they're like, okay, I won't do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like it's magic. And I completely understand, so much how people are drawn to that, because we're drawn to answers and we want them. And I find myself sometimes Googling late at night things that are impossible for anyone to answer that I'm struggling with, and there's a way that when we do that, we actually don't want an answer, right? Because I'm unique, my kids are unique, the situation is unique. We're not going to get a satisfying answer that's going to be deep enough and sustaining enough. We need to come to our own answers. And that's what really, my hope is for this book. Because when I read some of these the expert advice, I think to myself, what's the backstory here for you? Like, how did
right.
what happened in your own life. So I think there's something about just that sense of we're all in this together. There's a oneness here, the parenting experience, there's something one about it.
Right.
You experience it very differently.
So speaking of the struggle and the fact that we're all in this together, you of course you came to the end of this as the coronavirus arrived in all of our lives. And you, in the very beginning of the book, you don't just refer to it, you talk about it very clearly, because it's a very difficult thing to place the coronavirus at the in a piece of work that you've been toiling on for a long time. And God willing, this book will be around for a long time and the coronavirus will not be around any longer. But you had to refer to it because it was there as you were coming to the end of this project. So tell us a little bit about that. What were you thinking about? What were you doing about it? And then I want you to do a little exercise with us, if you'll be so kind. But first tell us about coronavirus and the book, and what were your thoughts when you were writing it in?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was like more than the elephant in the room, I mean, it was
Hmm,
so obvious in so many ways. And it was a real struggle between, on the one hand, wanting something to outlast the virus, but yet wanting something that also really speaks to this moment and this time that we're in now.
right,
Um, and I think there's real hardship and there's real struggle, and there's many times that I edited the piece again and again, because I just wanted to kind of be witness to what every we were all experiencing, that our
right,
pressure cookers, that it was impossible. The situation that parents were in, where it was and continues to be. I mean, in Israel, we just are kind of easing our way out of a second lockdown. Continues to be impossible. How we can show up, be patient, be kind, have the kids have clean clothes and have a healthy dinner that doesn't, consist of Oreo cookies. That like how can we, and managing it, we don't have enough computers, really impossible. And, with all of that, um, I think that there were also these moments that were amazing, how much more time we could spend with our kids, that the simplest pleasures were the best pleasures. That we didn't have to run from place to place. My husband and I have never not traveled, he travels a
right.
lot for work, and we've been home for so much of the time. Um, and so all of that was just really, so prescient, really, to be able to kind of
Right.
pick up on that dynamic of the too muchness of it all and the perfectly enough of it all. My daughter just had her 10th birthday and she was like, oh, Corona. And I'm like, oh my God, no stores are open. I can't get you a thing. And we realized the simplest pleasure was to ask a friend if she could lend us her dog for my daughter to have on Shabbat. And that was like the best
Nice.
world. And she reflected on that afterwards. So I think that there are these ways in which we, like, our life is too much, in general and all the time. And so how can we tone it down, dial it back, just like be a little bit simpler and use this time to kind of touch that simplicity a little bit.
Is there any particular soulful parenting, I don't know, mantra, thought, sentence, concept that you do tune into when you're having one of those Calgon take me away moments? I'm dating myself with the Calgon comment, but I think you all know what I mean. But no, really, I mean, the days are incredibly long these days. And I think everyone, wherever you are, we're all experiencing different parts of this. So and we know that you have your moments because you're very honest about them. But is there something that you find yourself that does work, that you find is generic enough that almost anyone can sort of come to that and say, okay, I can stop here and I can think about that and then I can move on to the next thing. I know it's a
Yes.
big question, sorry.
No, no, perfect. I think it's go outside and look up. That's it. I think that our ability to connect to the natural world is no matter what the weather is the most magnificent thing we can, we can connect to. I think looking up and knowing that we're small, we're small and there's something much bigger beyond us and above us and around us. I think it can give a sense of calm. I mean, even lying down, like wherever you are, like go to your driveway. I don't care if it's wet outside. I don't know what the weather is like in America. Here it's still very hot. Just like find a patch of grass, find something and just look up for a little bit. I think it's really can be calming. And it goes along the whole lines of just like time away, time outside, a time out, a break. You don't need a year sabbatical, right? You don't even need a weekend away with girlfriends, or boyfriends, which we'd all love to have probably. But we just need a little bit of time. So wherever that can be and however you can create that, I think it can be so centering, like Nishima
Yep.
and Nishama, right? Our breath and our soul are the same. So when we
Right.
breathe, like expand our inner cavity, we can expand our capacity to have our soul expand and become more us and more the person that we really want to be in the world and how we want to be with our family. I do that a lot. I take a lot of time away.
Okay. I'm gonna try it. Um, Something I also kept on thinking about as I was reading through is, and this is through my own prism, but how Jewish it is. And that, of course, that is what the Ayeka Soulful Parenting journey is. It's supposed to be Jewish, but then I was thinking about it as a reporter, publishing, the world out there. Um, did you think about toning it down? Did you think, no, there's no way I'm going to tone it down. This is who I am. What were your thoughts about that as you were as you were writing this?
I think that we can all only speak from our own place. I think that the whole marketing perspective of, how can I market this, I think has to come at the end of a process and not at the beginning of the process, especially for me, I just wanted the process to be authentic. And Jewish wisdom was what was the grounding for me, and
Right.
and what inspired me, and what gave me kind of a perspective and also a kind of a prism to look through. So I think that it was just very natural for me, and I'm happy that Jewish wisdom can also, is a part of world wisdom. So
Right.
there's no to say, well, this goes to only the Jewish people. And then, there's like, if you're Christian, you learn about the Gospels and, you learn about the Quran, and it's not how our lives are anymore. And so I think that for me, and especially to continue to be to promote the mission of Ayeka, it's really to bring out Jewish wisdom and Jewish sources to help us ask the deepest questions of our lives. So that was really the kind of that angle in, but we'll see, and for 3 months time, I'm going to be like, I really should have done a little bit more thinking
No,
about this.
no,
There are
but
a lot
I'm
of
wondering though, when you've done all these workshops, obviously a lot of them around the states, how I imagine you've had a lot of different kinds of audiences and groups. So how do people react if they're not necessarily coming from the same kind of traditional background that you are? How
yeah,
how has your audience reacted in that sense to it? I imagine
you know,
that's sort of, you
yeah,
know,
that's good, for sure. I mean, what we had, and I was careful to do this also for each chapter, that we brought a lot of Brene Brown and Parker Palmer and
right,
Ron and John O'Donohue and other Krista Tippett and lots of other people who have kind of been my rebbes, and working on this project. So hopefully that will be able to all be a point of reference for people so that they can say they see themselves in this, even if they don't know who Rav Kook is or know who a Hasidic rabbi is. So I think
right.
that it. Another piece, though, is that and for so many of the groups and through the JCC Association, for example, the a lot of early childhood directors aren't Jewish, and very much identify with, helping the Jewish
Hmm.
community develop. And there was such a resonance with the text that we chose, or how we would choose, we would write about it or think about it, that it's simply another source of wisdom. It's like taking Shakespeare or taking John Donne.
Right.
Being able to wrap your head around it and connect to it. There is definitely a spiritual orientation here, right? So for people who don't have a spiritual orientation and are uncomfortable talking about, God, a tikkun, like making having a purpose
Hmm.
that's really directed, that it, then that's where the distance would be, but not based on the Jewish sources, I think.
Right. No, um, the other thing I kept on thinking about, especially as I got to the grandparenting chapter, which is toward the end of the book, which I really loved. I'm a sandwich generation with 12-year-old twins and a 90-year-old mother and a 91-year-old mother-in-law. I love the grandparenting chapter, and I think it was a very helpful reminder of all the wisdom that's out there, whether you have your own parents who are grandparents, or people in your life who are older and wiser very often. And I know, and obviously your dear and beloved mother died during this process of writing the book. Um, I think it was such a great addition to have, and I'm wondering if that was something that you had planned from the start, or I'm sorry if this is hard, if it came about toward the end, as you were getting toward the end of the book, and what you wanted to make sure got in there.
Yeah, I definitely think it wasn't a part of our initial the initial plan. We had spoken at Ayeka around having a whole grandparenting track. That's
Mm,
also a whole other world that we could enter into educationally, and running workshops. And there's a lot more free time for retirees, and how wonderful to have them reflect on their own lives. So that was definitely a piece of our thinking organizationally. And then as I was writing, I mean, I think that my mom and dad have been such a tremendous impact on me, and also watching them grandparent my kids, that
right.
couldn't not include it in there. It was just so obvious to me, and especially in ways that we live in so much more siloed. We don't live in communities where, especially,
Right.
modern people don't live so close to all their family, and we're so lucky when we do, and we have that opportunity to. um, but even when they're not physically there and with us and next to us, helping us and guiding us, uh, I wanted to encourage the voice that grandparents can have in helping us give parents perspective as we're raising our children, because
Hmm.
I tremendous perspective. I write in the book that the grandparents are a link to history, and their grandchildren are a link to eternity. And that we have such a span, that they can, for grandparents to have that perspective as they look at their grandchild, of like, wow,
Right.
I'm seeing time that I won't live to see the end of in front of me here. And for children to also recognize that of their grandparents, or your children to recognize that of their grandparents, like, amazing, these people have lived through so much. um,
Right.
you know that was really a significant thing, that I just wanted to reflect on and talk about. And I did also chronicle, toward the end of my mother's life, the
Right.
more times, and also from that perspective that I needed to write about something that was very real, and it helped me process. But it also, I realized that I wanted to produce it. I had this kind of goal to finish the book before she passed away, and she
Right.
died. And
Right.
she got to
But
see many drafts,
oh,
so
good.
that.
I meant to ask you that. I meant to ask you if she how many drafts she got to see, and how many drafts she got to read. Good.
Yeah.
What what didn't make it in? I'm gonna go through a quick list here of what the chapters are, what the main subjects are. We've got the Corona times, being ourselves, we are the parents our children need. Remember, that's the big Dasee line. I have it actually written in my computer, and I can pull it up sometimes. You should know that, Dasee. Relationships, parenting styles, rivalry, competition, comparison, family routine, chaos, emotional overload, Shabbat, difficult times, grandparents, and prayer. And what didn't make it in there? Do you
Hmm.
remember? Do you have any recollection of what didn't make it in there, or what was sort of, almost didn't make it in there from the list that is there? Or something that you look at now and you say, "Do I need it now? Will you work on it more later in a second book?" Are
So
there
I
any?
think no, I love the question. I love the question. I think it's a great question. There was one, I had this idea that I would end the book with my kids' perspective on becoming a soulful parent, and because, right, like I speak a lot, but we don't hear their voice. Um,
Right.
or Leon's voice. We don't hear my husband's voice in there or anyone else, honestly. It's but I think but I actually interviewed my son at the end, and we had this whole interview, and it was the sweetest thing, and he shared all these things with me that normally he was like so excited to be in the book. He normally wouldn't share with me, and and in the end when we were reading it through, it felt like there wasn't enough of it. It felt like a little bit of an add-on, but I think it would lead me to thinking about, and this is a kind of a companion guide that we're toying with developing, also a companion guide about what would soulful conversations look like with your kids.
Right.
Have them, when do we have them? So that's one piece. Another piece is really the perspective of fathers and how hard it is to be a father today. This is very much written from
Hmm.
my perspective as a mother, and I think that there's a lot of work there. So I think that those are two big pieces, just perspective pieces. And then there's like an unending number of topics, that we could have added in
Right.
also.
Right. Okay, so now give us a little bit of the technical details here. That I know that there's this companion guide that you're going to have. The book is coming out in March, correct?
The book is
Give us a little.
But
Sorry.
yes, but we're in like a fun, like pre-publication period.
Right.
That's like
Right.
the evaluation
Right.
of that.
So
And
give
then
us a little bit of the timeline of what we have ahead of us in this soulful parenting journey that we can take together through the book.
Okay. So we have, so the books are available now, and I think in the chat, Ariella was kind enough to put up like a link that you can get a discount for the book now. It's being the Ayeka is co-publishing the book with a press called Casva Press, and so from now until March 1st, when it comes out to the world and will be on Amazon and all of that, and the publishing agency will take over a lot of the publicity for it. Ayeka has the chance to really to share the book with you. So you can purchase the book through us in Israel or abroad, and basically in the States, not in Europe. So that's the first piece of it, and the link will bring you to the discounted rate now. The second piece of it really is that I feel like a book on its own is great, but how much greater is it to actually use it as a platform to bring your friends together, to go to your community, to be able to convene conversations and gatherings, even if it's on Zoom, with your friends about pieces from the book. So that is something that we're putting together now. We're calling it a care package. Like, who doesn't want a care package nowadays?
Definitely.
And that is there'll be videos, and there'll be discussion guides and all sorts of things that will help you convene a group in your own, wherever's comfortable for you, where you live. So that's the next piece, and then we'll see from there. I really invite you to be in a live conversation with me, and with us at Ayeka about what more you need, what more we can do. We have a website that just went up that's called soulfulparent.com that you can also look at, and I'll be posting blogs periodically. We'll probably be developing new material up there. So that's the plan for now, but we're open to ideas too.
We are excited for all future additions and products and ideas from Soulful Parenting. I'm happy to open it up to questions and hopefully answers from the crowd that we have here. Yeah, a couple of screens of participants. The way we could do this is I open the chat for myself so I can see it, and I'm happy to look over there and see if there are questions. And I always have more questions. So if questions aren't coming up yet, I can definitely ask another one of my own. I'm just taking a look over here at the chat. Okay, we have the links to the book. Someone mentioned Soulful Parenting for Parents of Teens, which is an interesting comment because I know that when we did our group 5 years ago, I'm really kind of shocked that it was 5 years ago. In our particular group, most of the kids were young, toddler to, sort of elementary school. And you're also heading into the teen years as a parent. So that is a whole other area of soulful parenting. Is it something that you've already been taking copious notes both in your head and on the computer and in
Yeah.
your phone or some other place that a person takes notes?
It's a really great and important question, and I think one of it links me back to what you said initially, which was, well, how is it to write so personally about your kids? For me, them being the oldest one being 8 years old was felt safer to me. The issues didn't feel as serious at that age and stage of life. So I think that now, as we're moving into the preteen years, where children and their privacy is really, of utmost importance, I think that there's so much to develop here, but I would do it in a much different way.
How?
I think that I would focus a lot more on uh, our experience as parents and what we need to expand in ourselves in order to contain our children, or our teens, and to be a safe place for them and a firm place, and and a forever place for them. So
Right.
yeah, I think that's the beginning of movement, and I would love partnership with anyone on this call, to think more about that, especially those of you who have successfully raised your, adult children. But that's I think a piece of the direction. But I think that what we learn the most is that we can't control anyone. Even our babies, we can't control when they choose to eat, or when they go, when they poop or pee. Like, they're actually their own people from the very, very beginning. And so all the more so as they're trying to figure out who they want to be as human beings in the world. But I think that that's a direction, really focus on us and our capacity, how we can expand it.
Um, and the other thing I'm thinking about, because I'm just sort of looking at the chat, making sure that I'm not missing anything here, is, and I'm thinking about an experience I had today where the whole day on Zoom classes went very, very well. And then at the end of the day, which for us is around 3 o'clock, one of my kids did something or didn't do something, and I lost it. I had just said to my husband minutes earlier, God, this has been like a pretty decent day. This is maybe the good day of the week. Yesterday was a bad day, and we'll see what tomorrow is. And then I lost it, lost my temper, and he held on to his, and a few minutes later, because I get over my loss of temper very easily, he said, "Okay, you lost your temper. It's not the end of the world. You can still go back and be the parent that you need to be." And I think for all of us, and you definitely speak about this in the book, is, soulful parenting and the corona, and during these days, during COVID-19 and the coronavirus. And it's great advice to look up at the sky when you can remember to do that. And I'm definitely going to do that the next time tomorrow morning. And I'm sure there are others of us who will also take heed and do that. But there's sort of, I guess, my overarching question is, we have to all strive to be soulful parents in this very crazy time that nothing quite like this has been experienced by humans in quite a long time, right? When was the Spanish flu? And right, 100 years ago. And where, sort of to sum it all up, and it's not necessarily fair to sum up with a coronavirus question, but that's where we are. can one be a soulful parent in the age of coronavirus, or do we get more sort of we do we get more little clicks on our card? Do we get away with more in our soulful parenting or our lack thereof in times like these?
I think it's interesting what you're asking, because I think that there's almost a way in which the idea of soulful parent we think means, completely attuned, meditative, uber connected. And I
Mm,
think it can mean that if you want to take it to one level, but it can mean like just a little bit of that. When I use the term soulful or becoming a soulful parent, I think the word becoming is really important there, because becoming means that we're always on a journey, we're always in a process, we're always becoming. And soulful is an awareness and an opening of our eyes to say that we're here for a reason, our kids are here for a reason, our partners are here for a reason. Our like this situation is exactly what it needs to be to teach me many lessons in my life, you know.
right.
And so I think that that's, it's not like, am I an awesome parent or am I a terrible parent? Am I a soulful parent or am I a,
Mm,
not a good parent? But it's more about like kind of just saying like, okay, I'm like, I would say that it's kind of like Winnicott's. I'm a good enough parent. I'm a soulful parent that has a little bit of that recognition and can return to it easily with a reminder that, this is meant to be the way it is right now. For in my family, like this structure of my family is what it is, and it's cherished because it's what it is. And I think there's a way that the the soulful parenting would even say to me at the end of your, you lost your temper, but how many amazing things did you do yesterday? I mean, my God, you fed them. There was breakfast, like there was milk in the fridge. You know what I mean? Like, so there are ways in which it's. I would also really applaud ourselves. I think it's about being very self-compassionate. It's applauding what we do well. It's being able to set boundaries and say it's too much. Your demands are too much right now for me, or
mhm,
in the house, it's too much for me. So I think that all of that is also what being a soulful parent means, which is to say that you're going to also be able to maintain your boundaries and what you need in order for you to function, because there's some times that you just can't function. You're not like blissed out nirvana parent, like they wouldn't learn anything about life if you were. Um,
Right. Um, so before I'm going to give you a chance to wrap up, there is a comment here from Lynn Weinstein suggesting that Dasee, you should consider a podcast for discussion of ongoing becoming a soulful parent topics. So just I think you should keep that in mind as you go forward with the year of becoming a soulful parent, the years of becoming a soulful parent. I want to say thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk to you about this great book and project and journey that you've gone through and that you're helping the rest of us go through. And I hand it over to you to sum up anything else that you want to add and tell this lovely group of people that we have here tonight.
Mm. Well, I really am just, I'm really filled with gratitude, and thank you, Jessica, for being in conversation with me tonight. And, I just so look forward to all of the conversations that we can also continue to have together. The things that you struggle with, the things that, the areas you want to grow, your own stories, that we can be able to continue sharing that with each other, whether you write to me personally or, buy the book, be in touch with me. But I think that there's a way, especially in this time, and that when we think about this period of time, sometimes people say, oh, I want to go back to the way that it was, or I can't
Mm,
wait till it's over. And I think my blessing for us for the way and for the path is to just really be aware as we're moving through, because we're only going to be able to move through. And we can move through by being honest with ourselves and open with our children and reaching out to friends and people to support us when we need help. So I think that that's really what it would mean to continue having soulful conversations and soulful communities. And I also just want to end by really thanking all of the Ayeka staff and that it's here to help. Ariella has helped so much with putting tonight together. Yehoshua Looks has been amazing at supporting every step of the way. David Kahn, who is the chair of Ayeka, who has done tremendous work and really supporting me, and Aryeh Ben David, who really envisioned and founded the whole project of Ayeka. I'm really just supremely grateful to all of you and to everyone for coming. So thank you for being here, and to be continued.
To be continued, definitely. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Dasee. Nice to see you. Dasee, I'm Rachel Master's mother from La Havana.
Remember.
You have wonderful, and I ordered the book, and I thank you so much. Lots of mazel, and keep safe with you and your beautiful family. I'm sorry to hear about your mom. I did not know. I'm so sorry, but I did see your dad on, and it's good to see him. Be well.